how long have you been a Bucks fan, and what got you into being to following the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Uh, let's see. I've been a Bucks fan since I was about 6 years old. I'm 20, so 2005. That's the year Cadillac Williams won Rookie of the Year. So a pretty good year to get into it. But I just fell in love with this and started watching it one day.
Yeah. Are you
I've
from
just been,
Are you from the Tampa Bay area, or where you from?
yeah,
Okay.
from Tampa.
All right. Cool. See, it's funny for me because I'm one of the fans that started never having any intention of even living in Florida. I was from Mississippi, and I became a Bucks fan. So I started following after Hardy Nickerson joined the team, like back in '94, and then the year after that, that's when we got Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks and the rest of those cast and everything kind of took off from there. So, so you grew up in the area. So you from 2005, you gotten you had
Yeah, got there right as soon as everything went downhill, I
yeah
guess.
you got 2 years. You got 2 years of decency, and then it kind of went downhill in 2007, 2008. It's funny for me to listen to people who are actually from the area to get into it because they hold a different level of loyalty to the team and to certain players and so forth. Because a lot of them who grew up, especially from the get go back in like '76, what have you, the origin of the team, like they've seen a lot of bad play, like on both sides of the ball at every position. So we've kind of seen a whole lot of bad stuff happen, and then we kind of seen the emergence of it, and then not just the emergence, but a level of dominance from the time that Tony Dungy had come in, and like basically a year or so after his taking over the team, we kind of saw like a level of dominance, especially on the defensive side of the ball, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Everything else just kind of chugged along. Um, so in that time that you became a fan in 2005, again, Cadillac Williams was a big deal as a rookie. What was the thing that stood out for you for the team itself, like beyond just the one individual player? Like, what was the one thing that stood out for you, and what was the feeling that you got watching the team?
Hard to describe in words, but I guess I just have to say the idea that no one position, no matter how much impact it has on the game, can do it all by themselves. It has to be a concerted team effort. One player cannot just carry the whole team, no matter how good they are. I like the idea of like it. It seems like football is a perfect team sport more than soccer or baseball or hockey or basketball. Everyone contributes in some way, shape, or form, and I think that's just kept me hooked the entire time.
That's cool. That's funny that you say that too, because the very first team that I ever had that I ever paid attention to as a kid was the Chicago Bears, like back in '86 when they won that championship. And the exact same feeling that you have about the Bucks and teams in general. That's how I felt about the Bears. Like the Bears were predominantly known as a defensive team. They, of course, had an offense, and they had one of the greatest offensive players in the history of the game in Walter Payton. But nobody was bigger than the team. It was the team. It was the Chicago Bears. You knew them for one thing, but nothing drove everybody down. Nobody was bigger than the team. Not the biggest. Not even the biggest player on the team in Walter Payton. One of the famous stories being in the Super Bowl was that he was upset that refrigerator Perry got the nod to get a touchdown from the goal line, and he didn't. But nothing was bigger than the team, and that's what I loved about the Bears, and that's also how I ended up becoming in love with the Bucks as well. So we kind of share that we kind of share that world as far as a foundation for a team. Like no matter who is on the roster, it's a team game, and nobody's bigger than a team. And that's kind of where I actually wrote an article about the team, about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this upcoming year for the 2020 season, about them needing to find an identity. And one of the reasons that because for the past few seasons, it seemed like their identity was trying to make something or force a narrative. Again, that's just my opinion. It felt like they were trying to force a narrative as being an offensive team more than being a defensive team, and especially rallying behind a quarterback, which a lot of people think. and feel like that's the way to go. You have to have like a franchise quarterback. I think those things you have to kind of let just kind of formulate and just become a thing themselves and just kind of let it grow organically, a word that I actually hate using. But instead of like forcing and trying to make a franchise quarterback or a franchise any kind of player, you just kind of have to let them evolve to that. And that kind of led me to the whole drafting deal because different coaches that we've seen in Tampa Bay, depending on how they wanted to formulate their team and build their team, it reflected in the draft, which brings us up to now. Like we're looking at our draft now, and there's a big decision. There's big decisions, plural, as to how the team is going to draft and how they're going to build the team going forward. Looking at what you formulated on the Buccaneers Reddit subreddit on Reddit.com, which is a big source for a lot of people to get a lot of info as well as circulate and populate their opinions and kind of see how everything flows from there. I mean, you have a big board right now. We're in week 4, which has been a pretty cool idea. Just kind of weekly going through like the ups and downs as far as who's rising up the boards and who's being talked about the most and who's being mocked and this and that to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Where do you see the Bucs actually going, or how do you feel like the Bucs should actually be going according to like the best players available, the best players slated in this upcoming draft?
Well, definitely tackle, specifically right tackle, is a big need, and anyone who denies that just hasn't really watched the Bucs last season or the season before, honestly. Like, even if we didn't know who was playing quarterback, like, or I don't know, even if quarterback was a huge need for us, I'd still say tackle is a big need because we gave up like second most sacks in the league. But tackle, I think, is the way they should go. Should any of the top 4 guys be available? But after that, I'd say I'm just leaving quarterback out of the equation for now.
Mm-hmm.
Just every position besides quarterback, I'd say after tackle would probably be maybe an edge rusher opposite Shaq Barrett.
Okay.
Or maybe someone on the interior, because when you look at our defensive line, we don't really have a ton of young talent there right now. We've got Vita, who is amazing, but after that, it's just some vets. You got Sue, you got Bo Allen, you
Bo,
got
Bo
Nunez
Allen is
Roches.
Bo Allen is slated to be a free agent. Also, of course, Sue is somewhat as a free agent as
I thought
well.
I thought Bo Allen had another year on his
As of now,
contract.
Bo Allen does not have any guaranteed money. I think he's slated as a free agent coming up in 2020.
Say if Derek Brown is available at pick 14,
Man, I love it.
putting him next to Vita would be, just thinking about that would be
That's a scary thought, man.
scary.
That is
I
a
was watching a I was watching a video from Pro Football Focus. I don't know how much stock he put into their analysis, but they gave a player comp and they said Derek Brown's strength is comparable to Vita's. So putting 2 of those guys on the same line.
That's a super scary thought. You know, I watched a little bit of Derek Brown, and initially my first thought, I'm like, yo, that guy reminds me a lot of Ndamukong Suh out of college. Like he was that kind of a bully of a player. Like he was just a mean dude. Like he played through the whistle. He didn't play to the whistle. He played through it, and he was a scary dude. I mean, they had some pretty good guys on Auburn's defensive line, especially between him and the defensive end. I forget his name right now.
Davidson.
Yeah, it was Davidson. Yeah, Davidson was a solid guy. again, you look at somebody who can do what Derek Brown can do, and stuff the run as well as get to the quarterback the way he can. You can't double both him and and Vita Vea. Vita Vea was my favorite guy coming out of that defensive tackle group back in 2018. Of course, that was a big civil war between defensive tackle and safety with the BUCS and all that. But yeah, if Derek Brown becomes available, he's a scary guy. Now I want to go back to one of your top positions you have at right tackle, because that was also something I'm actually going to be writing up about a little bit later. But again, and I absolutely respect the opinion. Right tackle is definitely a need. Right tackle is a definite need, and it's been a need in my book for the last 4 seasons. Um, DeMar Dawson has been one of my favorite players in the history of Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Since I've been a fan, he has been one of my favorite players, both he and Donald Penn at the tackle position. These guys are true success stories when it comes to Tampa Bay players. These guys they were undrafted players, and they came in, they got to the starting position, and they kept that position, and rightfully so. Like, nobody can move them from their position. They made it, and they were both damn good for a long time. Going back about 4 seasons ago, I thought that DeMar Dawson was slipping a good bit when it came to the run blocking portion of the game. A lot of people paid attention to pro football Pro Football Focus's grade that they had on him as a pass protector and so forth, which he was relatively solid. But as a run blocker, he always got upright really fast. He kind of held the position. He just rarely pushed anyone back and made space. And that's always been an issue with me, and I always questioned it. I didn't know if he had just gotten so strong or he had a technique issue in which, in the past, and he was so strong that that technique worked for him. But over the last few seasons, so I said, hey, that's not working. When I started seeing the run game getting stalled, it was because a good bit of it because we couldn't run to the right side. Anytime that we ran to the right side, it would be stuffed at the line or behind the line of scrimmage. And again, it was his issue. But I don't know that a top offensive tackle, especially at right tackle, would make a huge difference as a whole for the BUCS. And that's just kind of my theory for most teams. Unless you have like a superior offensive line or a huge gap between the offensive line and a bunch of other players, I don't see where investing a top pick at that position. I'm not sure how it fares out as well over other positions. So if you can go into a little bit, if you can, just go in a little bit into how you measured that the need for the right tackle position specifically. How did you measure that according to the talent and how it lined up in this year's draft?
Well, I think this is a pretty decent tackle class. And, you got to weigh the value of drafting a tackle to start immediately or signing someone in free agency or bringing DeMar Dotson back for whatever reason.
Which I would be against, actually. I love him to death. But I would be against his returning at the level of play he's displayed over the past few years.
But we've got some names in free agency that we should probably be bringing back. And I don't know how much would be left over potentially, but probably not much to get one of the top tackles in free agency.
Okay. When you say we have some names that we want to bring back, are you speaking of on the BUCS roster? Some names that the BUCS would need to be re-signed and then look at the position, or are we speaking about the free agents, the offensive tackle free agents?
I'm talking about the team itself.
Okay, great. So I tell you what, this is what I do for a second here. I'll run down basically the highest paid players that we have right now who are slated right now to be free agents. We've got Ndamukong Suh, He's one of the more expensive players that you would have. Um, at least going back to his 2019 salary. So you had Ndamukong Suh, you have the quarterback position at Jameis Winston. We have at right tackle DeMar Dotson, Bo Allen, who is also a free agent, Shaquille Barrett, who everybody fully expects that we re-sign him, be it franchise tag or long term extension. Most of us, I'm sure, would love to have the long term extension. Um, Rashad Perriman, Jason Pierre-Paul. After that, it kind of slides down a little bit. You got Peyton Barber, Blaine Gabbert, Darian Stewart at free safety. Carl Nassib would be the more notable name, I guess, in the rest of the lineup here as far as free agents that we have coming off. One big one we have is Ryan Smith at cornerback, who has been a special teams ace for the team. So he's another big name, and the rest of them are again they're just like role players. A lot of them are role players and so forth. So we do have a lot of positions, guys who started or guys who are like really big in the rotation, especially on defense, to come in. Of course, we got the right tackle position, which you've mentioned, in which DeMar Dotson was the starter, and there was nobody. And we saw what it looked like without him being a starter for, I think, 2 games, and it was ugly. It was ugly.
Wasn't one of the games he was out against the Saints at home?
Yes, it was.
That was painful to watch.
Yeah, yeah, it was. We gave up. Man, I forget how many sacks we got up, but we gave up a hell of a lot of pressures. Man, it was. It was like I give our quarterback a good bit of grief, according to a lot of people. But that game right there, he was. Even if the pressure didn't get to him, he was under siege. There was a lot of. There was the floodgates were open on that game, man. It was ugly. If the Bucks had their pick of 3 of the top offensive tackles that were available, who do you like, and can you say why or what you've seen from him so far, what you like about him the most?
If I had my pick of any of the tackles, it would almost definitely be Jedrick Wills, tackle from Alabama.
Out of Alabama, okay.
He's everything we're looking for. Plays right tackle, great pass protector, mauler in the run game. He's young. He's probably going to test pretty well at the combine. He's checks every box, unless he has horrendous interviews. I would say take him if he's there.
Yeah,
he's everything we're looking for.
Yeah, he'd be a solid guy. Would you? If he was a top 10 player, he's probably going to be a top 10 player. I think at least 2 offensive tackles are going to make it into the top 10. He's probably going to be one of them. Would you advocate the Bucks to do whatever it take to get him? Like, would you advocate a trade up at this point for one of the top tackles?
Trading up.
I got strong feelings about trading up in this draft.
It would really depend on who was being taken, like ahead of us, and how far ahead we would be trading up.
Okay.
I would probably be against trading up into like the top 7, but after like trading up to 8 or 9 or 10 around there, I wouldn't be too against.
Okay.
But
well, I'll tell you what, you can if you can list me some of your favorite players in this draft that that you're looking at, you're diving a little bit deeper into to make sure that what you're looking at is real. Like, who do you love in this draft for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Probably, imagine if Chase Young was available at 14.
My God.
Imagine that.
Man. I would frame him myself if I could to make sure that happened. He's mean, man. I watched about an hour and a half of game clips and highlights from him last night, and it was almost like it was my first time doing so, even though I had done so several times. But I went back and I was just watching him. I was like, this dude is damn near unbelievable. I thought Myles Garrett was unbelievable. Somehow this dude outdoes him somehow, some way. Like it's amazing that that dude is 6'5", 268, I believe, and he just sprints to the quarterback. Like the whoever, whether it's a left tackle or right tackle, are like a minor inconvenience for this cat for a lot of these plays I watch him on. And I'm not just watching highlights. Like I'm watching actual game clips, every snap from several games. So far, I think it's been 4 games I've been able to pull from the 2019 season. And yeah, if that dude slipped to number 7, I think the Bucs ought to just do whatever the hell they can. Like trade, give him naming rights to Raymond James Stadium. Like,
If he somehow makes it past Redskins, Lions, Giants, who else is it? Miami.
man, man, worse, crazier things have happened, man. Crazier things have happened. If I could just find a gas mask and some weed, we'd be in business. Chase Young would be the dream scenario if he made it to 14, or if he slipped anywhere out of the top 5, what have you. So we make a major trade. So outside, and so obviously we have like a few holes outside of, the defensive line. We got pending free agents with Bo Allen and Ndamukong Suh, and Ndamukong Suh was a starter obviously, and Bo Allen was a rotational guy. And then we also have Carl Nassib, who is slated to be a free agent if we can't get, hopefully they can sign him back. Who have you seen, or have you seen anybody else in the draft? Outside of, we got Derek Brown, who again is a dream scenario, along with Chase Young. Is anybody you've seen who's kind of like been like a diamond in the rough, or somebody off your big board who a lot of people aren't paying attention to, that could jump in either the first or second round at 14, or at pick 13 in the second round? Like, is anybody who you see that can come in and kind of fill those roles in case we don't re-sign any of those guys?
Well, let me throw you back to last year's draft. I had a specific player that I thought was perfect for the Bucks. Chris Lindstrom, the guard out of Boston College,
Mm-hmm.
who unfortunately got drafted in the first round by Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought he was perfect, and if he was available in the second round, he would have been amazing for us.
Okay.
This year, that player for me is Lucas Niang, the tackle at TCU.
TCU, yep. I took a look at him as well.
Right tackle, big, long, athletic, good in the run game. Yeah,
Okay.
I've seen like 1 or 2 mock drafts having him going late first round, but if he's still available second round and we don't go tackle first round, I'd say get him.
There are a lot of tackles in this GS draft who would be good. Like, it's a pretty deep class for offensive linemen, offensive tackles specifically. I mean, like a lot of guys. I'm just like, holy crap. Again, this is a super deep draft and offensive tackle. And right now I'm looking at Lucas Yang. So he is the 58th ranked player in this draft, according to CBS Sports. He's the 58th ranked, 58th ranked player and the 11th ranked tackle. That sounds crazy, right? That sounds like almost like there's no way that there's 10 guys better than him, as good as he can be. Dude is 6'6", 315, and again, everything that you look at in the video, game clips or what have you, he looks like he can be a dominant player, especially at right tackle.
I'm not against taking guys who play left tackle, but being able to just come in and not have to switch positions, switch up the side of the line that they play on is a plus.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I go back to when it comes to taking a tackle that high, if it's not going to be a left tackle and somebody who you think can be absolutely dominant and what have you. It's the fact that we can't, again, no one player, oftentimes no one player on the offensive line can just make an offensive line so much better, significantly better for a lot of cases. Like we go back to a couple years ago when what's my guy's name who from the Colts, Quentin Nelson, when Quentin Nelson was like all the rage, and it was like, man, the Bucs absolutely have to do whatever they can do to get Quentin Nelson. At the time, I'm like, Quentin Nelson, as good as he may be, he's not going to make DeMar Dotson a greater player. DeMar Dotson is not going to become great with with a with the addition of a Quentin Nelson. Alec Marpet is already solid. He's not going to be great with Quentin Nelson. This was my train of thought. Again, it's just one person's opinion. And the same thing with I'm like, everybody on the line, they'll benefit from him, but it's not going to save him, because he's going to be blocking one guy, and then everybody else going to be blocking their man as well. It's not like it's not like, okay, they're going to double team. He's not going to take on, for the most part, more than one player. And we kind of saw that we only needed competence at the right guard spot, instead of like dominance from like a generational player like a Quentin Nelson. So, I mean, that was the only reason I kind of thought in my mind that possibly, right tackle may be like a reach to a degree. It could be a reach, but then again, if the player falls at 14 and it's a dominant player, I mean, I completely agree with you that you have to take the dominant player, whoever it may be. And again, it's these offensive tackles, man. It's just such a what I think is a deep class of offensive tackles. Like, I'm looking at some of these guys, I'm like, yo, there's like, I'm looking at 25. I'm looking at 25 solid offensive tackles. Then, I mean, they're not specified right tackle or left tackle. I'm looking at 25 of them that may come out of this draft, like in the first 3 or 4 rounds. And that's amazing to me, because a couple years ago we thought that was like the defensive line and defensive tackles and so forth that was that deep. This year's offensive tackle and wide receiver that is super, super deep.
Someone I've got my eye on.
Who's that?
That may slip to maybe like the 3rd or 4th round. Trey Adams, the tackle out of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
He is 6'8", 314. And he might slip because he's got some injury history. He's got a knee and back injury in his past, but that he might slip due to that. But I'm reading his profile on Draft Network, and it's like, if he can stay healthy, he could probably be one of the best tackles.
Yeah, man. Coming out with, I guess that's a definite red flag. I guess having knee issues and back issues at that position, at the offensive tackle position, that's a scary thing, because we're looking at DeMar Dotson, and one of the reasons why he slowed down, again, he had age, but yeah, the knee injuries, and playing through knee injuries. That's kind of one of the reasons it felt like he had slowed down a few years ago and so forth. I'm not sure that he had any back injuries. But we knew we had back injuries. A couple of our players at right guard with J.R. Sweezy. And we saw, we can't have a bounce back year, and you can get back after having such injuries. Did Trey Adams have any surgeries of any kind? Do you know of that, as far as his back injury?
I believe so. He did have surgery. I'm looking right now.
I mean, we don't want to say that, having a back surgery or a procedure of any kind can be like the end of someone's career.
He probably had surgery.
Cool. Well, yeah, like I said, we don't want to assume that having a procedure of any kind can be the end of someone's career, especially if they get it in college and the collegiate years. They got enough time to properly get themselves back into shape and work their way up, so they can actually ascend whatever level they got that injury in, and make it to the pro level, where there's a different kind of practice and a different kind of medical procedures and medical training and so forth. So we don't want to write him off just because he had an injury or two. I think that'll be wrong to do so. There have been players who've come into the draft and they've excelled, having had a history of injuries prior, and yeah, so you definitely don't want to assume that the worst for him. But right now, he is, according to these rankings, he would be the 12th ranking right after Lucas Niang out of TCU. So that's a funny deal there. But man, there's so many offensive tackles, and one of the reasons why the Bucks couldn't run the ball as well was because they couldn't run the ball. I'm sorry, well, they didn't have a lot of success because they couldn't run the ball well, especially to the right side. Um, again, and it's been that way for years. It's been that way for years. And you look at who was on the right side of the line the past few years after Alan Marpet had his rookie season, and they kind of started switching them around. Um, you had Sweezy, who was coming off a back injury out of Seattle. You also had Caleb Benenoch, who
Ugh.
he was a fifth rounder guy who stayed around long enough to get a shot, and he was there's no sugarcoating. He was not good. He had a very bad season there. And prior to that, who else do we have? We had Evan Smith. Evan Smith, who went back and forth between
Center.
he went between center and right guard, and it wasn't great. It wasn't great. So because we've been conditioned, because we were so conditioned to be like, man, we have to have we got to have like the best right guard there is. We got to have like the best guy there is. It was basically like the want to overcompensate because we had such bad luck, or we had such bad performances from three players. Again, only speaking in relative terms to the NFL. All these cats who play in the NFL, when they make it to that level, they're obviously good at what they do. And when you're talking about being an athlete and so forth, so I don't want to just besmirch anyone's work and talk down on anybody like that. But relative to NFL standards, those three guys for 3 straight seasons, we had not good performances. And you put that together with, again, DeMar Dotson, in my eyes, who was slipping in performance, specifically in the rushing game and the running attack. It just wasn't a good deal. It just wasn't a good deal. So now, we got Alex Kappa in there, and Alex Kappa, as soon as he got in this past season, 2019 season, was basically his first season. 2018, the few games he got in, and I think it was in week 10, he was rotating.
They were switching him and out.
Yeah, he was rotating. Like, he came in, I think he only played about 11% of the snaps. He only played like 11% of the snaps that year. And then this year he came in and he did, again, in my opinion, I thought he held up relatively well. I mean, he wasn't a superstar. I thought he did relatively well. What did you think of Alex Kappa in his second season?
Let's just say red shirt freshman season for him.
Yeah.
But Alex Kappa is probably our best option at right guard at the moment. I don't see anyone coming in and replacing him right now.
So he's a cool guy.
And considering he came out of Humboldt State, was it?
Right, yeah.
I don't even think they have a football program anymore. I think that was their last season when he came out.
That might be true. I have to take a look at that. I forget. I'm like, yeah, they suffered the same fate as UAB, but yeah, I think they still have a team. I think I have to take a look, but I think. But again, a small school. It was a step up in competition in every single way. And the reason why I felt good about him in his rookie season, when he actually did get a few snaps, he didn't look any more out of place than Caleb Benenoch or J.R. Sweezy. He
probably a little better, honestly.
I would say he did. I mean, the level of expectation and the performance kind of there's a correlation there. Like if he was a first round pick, second round pick, and he had played in a big school his entire career, you'd be like, okay, he should be better. But he actually got in, and I feel like I was impressed with his work. Again, he was doing it at the worst. He was doing it in one of the worst scenarios ever for an offensive lineman. He was doing it in a rotation. 10 weeks in, he gets in and he gets a few snaps, and then he's out, and then he comes back in, and then he's out again. Like, and that I didn't understand that. I didn't understand it
That
when he
really,
did it, but it was
that
weird.
really is
Yeah,
worst possible scenario.
yeah,
Small school rookie comes in, plays on a not the best offensive line, not the best supporting cast around him, and gets rotated in and out. It's not a good way to develop a player.
no, it was not. Fortunate for him though, the bar was so low. Probably the bar was so low when it came to what
Yeah.
we had gone through that he was able to meet that bar and excel. He was able to raise his level of play as well as raise the bar. And I think in the 2019 season he did so. Again, nothing spectacular, but he showed his heart, and he showed that he wasn't a complete liability. He got whooped
It,
sometimes, but
he didn't he play through when we played in New Orleans. He played through
the
an
fractured
arm
arm.
injury.
Yeah, the fractured arm, and
Yeah.
then the floodgates opened.
Yep.
it was it was not great. It was not great. All right, cool. So again, we looked at how deep the offensive tackle position is in this
Yeah.
upcoming draft and so forth. Is that what other position groups have you looked at that you look at and be like, okay, that's our next group, and this is the next big player. Like we can't pass up if we end up getting if this guy falls into our lap in any round at any spot, we can't pass up on this position group or this player.
When draft season rolled around, I was I was thinking about our running backs, and I was looking at what we've got. We've got Marl Jones, who's a good. He's he's got speed. He can. He's probably is gonna be running back one for us next season, unless we draft or sign somebody. But we don't really have a reliable pass catcher out of the backfield,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't really have because Peyton Barber is gone. We don't really have like that oomph, that power back either.
Yeah,
So getting one of those, getting a reliable pass catcher or a power back would probably be like a secondary need for us.
okay.
We'd probably address it in like the fourth or fifth round. But I would really like for us to get someone with return ability
Mm-hmm.
because our return game has been awful for what seems like forever now. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, Bruce Arians feel like we've got somebody on the roster already who's that guy.
yeah, TJ Logan,
Yeah, he loves that guy. Um, yeah, he won't let him go. I think
he
he's.
could have
I think
taken
he's.
a couple.
I'm sorry. Go again.
He looked like he could have taken a couple back this season. He looked good on a couple returns.
Yeah, for some reason I wasn't completely just blown out of the water with him.
No,
Yeah,
wasn't amazing,
no.
but better than what we had.
There's one guy that I've looked at. He's actually a wide receiver though, but he could be a return guy. Lynn Bowden Jr. out of
Oh yeah, I
Kentucky.
heard about him.
That dude, that dude is scary. That dude is scary with the ball in his hands, man. And he does it all. He's like he's all. It's funny. I have to compare him a little bit to Adam Humphries. Like the cat can, if he end up having to be a backup quarterback, he could be the backup quarterback. Dude will be the fastest wide receiver on the roster, and he could pretty much play. He could pretty much play three positions. He'll never see quarterback, obviously. I don't think so. But wide receiver, kick returner, man, that dude, that's a dude right there. I'm very interested in taking a good look at during this combine.
I am a sincere believer that we should look at wide receiver in this draft.
I
Not
want
not a, not getting one high, but this is a good wide receiver class, and just getting someone to compete with Justin Watson, Scotty Miller. We don't know if Behrman's coming back, even though I'd like him to come back, but we don't know for sure yet. So
not
just getting someone to come in here and compete.
not a big fan of having Perriman come back. Not at that. Not at $4 million, which was his contract, I believe, this year. $4 million.
Yeah,
That's a 4-year contract for a third-round player. And that should be wide receivers good enough to be selected in the third round for the Bucs in this upcoming draft. I mean, I look at it that way. Obviously, it's not my money, nothing like that. I'm not an accountant, but I know what makes sense and I feel like I know what makes sense and what doesn't. So $4 million for Brashad Perriman, to see if he can be a glimmer, a glimpse of what we saw, for a few games this past year, for 3 or 4 games. Yeah, I would. That would be a hard pass for me to have him come back at that
yeah.
at that rate.
It seemed like until Mike went out, and it was him and Godwin, and he was getting more passes thrown his way. He wasn't really taking advantage of the opportunities he got. So
Right.
when both Mike and Chris went out, and he was our number one wide receiver, and Jameis was just funneling him the ball, it seemed like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
gotta you gotta get him the ball constantly for him to produce, which
Which had never really happened during the entire season, unless something bad happened to Mike Evans and or Chris Godwin.
yeah,
You kind of have to have somebody who can be a threat regardless of who else is on the field with him, and that kind of wasn't the case with him last
yeah,
year. I mean,
I,
he's a good player. I mean,
yeah,
he was he was on the receiving end of some ridiculous plays and some actual surprising plays and some that were just complete foolishness that he went above and beyond to pull him in. But for the most part, for the money, I just don't see why they would want to bring him back with that amount of money. Plus, when you look at the competition in which he had those games in, some of the worst secondaries in the league. I think there was only one game in which that game against might have been 2 games. I think the game against Houston. I think he had a decent game, had a good game, I believe, in that game. Against a relatively solid secondary. The other teams, Detroit and Atlanta, and a couple other games, they were kind of like lower tier competition when it comes to the secondary. Like everybody, somebody in every game against them had a similar game that he had. It was surprising to see him have that game, but again, you just had him and like one other receiver that was on the field that you could look at that would possibly put up some numbers and some decent production, and it happened. I want to take that away from him. It happened, but in context, you look at the competition who it happened against. You kind of have to weigh that too, and actually be really real with the assessment. Like, okay, great, 142 yards. The defense that you did it against was 32nd ranked, 31st ranked, 26th ranked, blah blah blah. Um,
yeah,
so no, but I agree with you. I do think the Bucs absolutely need to make wide receiver a priority, and I actually believe that they should actually go for him a little bit higher if possible. For the simple fact, not a simple fact, but for my opinion, that until you have every wide receiver on your roster that can compete for at least the number 2 position, you need to stock up on them and keep going for offensive talent. And the more you spend on offensive talent at wide receiver, anyways, the lesser you have to force to try to make your quarterback be something he's not. You don't have to have a quarterback who has to try to make something out of nothing. You've already got wide receivers as well as other offensive players on the receiving end that can actually make something happen. You're making the job easier for your quarterback. So that's one of the reasons why I always advocated going for really good wide receiver talent if it's available.
Who are you a fan of in like the mid rounds at wide receiver?
Mid rounds at wide receiver, looking at the say third and fourth rounds here. KJ Hill out of Ohio State. Um,
Yeah,
KJ Hill is one of the guys I like a good deal. I mentioned Lynn Bowden from Kentucky. He's a favorite. There's a cat by the name of Jawan Johnson. He's actually a later round guy. Actually, Jawan Johnson out of Oregon. This cat I believe is 6'4" or something like that. He's like six, he's almost like he's almost the same. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
6'4", 230.
Whoa! I didn't think he was that heavy. Wow! I didn't realize he was.
Looking at his profile on Draft Network.
Yeah, I'm not sure he was that heavy.
I think the combine measurements happened today. They probably got updated.
Actually, I apologize. I'm looking. I just pulled him up too. Yeah, I got him listed as 230. But that dude is something else, man. I like that guy a lot. Also, another big wide receiver, nowhere near as heavy though. Kendrick Rogers out of Texas A&M, 6'4", 208. This dude got hands. For a big guy, I don't. I think his hands are ridiculous for as big as he is. Those are four players I've looked at wide receiver who I think can be mid to late rounds. Who I think the Bucks could take a shot on. I apologize. I don't say the Bucks could take a shot on them because I have zero clue as what the Bucks would or could do. But they're definitely players I would like to see get a shot with the Bucks. Again, these guys either have tremendous speed or they have tremendous size and run after the catch ability. That's what I like about Jawan Johnson and Kendrick Rogers specifically. These are big dudes, but when they catch the ball, they can get after it. They can go, and that's what I love about wide receivers. Those are the things I look at when I look at wide receivers. What kind of contact, how they act towards contact, as far as taking on contact, and then the run after contact. I don't care about the yards after contact as much. I care about the effort after contact. You see a guy who gets hit or get wrapped up by two players or so, and they're still pushing and they're trying to go. Those are the guys who get my attention, and those players I mentioned, they do just that.
What do you think of Van Jefferson, wide receiver out of Florida?
You know, I've not taken a look at Van Jefferson. I'm not taking a good look at him whatsoever. What am I missing? What kind of a player is he? I'll put them in my notes to go. Actually, I'm going to flag that now. And yeah. What have you seen and what do you like out of him?
Well, he's a redshirt senior out of Florida, so he's going to be an older rookie. But everything I've seen about him, he's got some of the best route running in the entire wide receiver class.
Okay.
And he's one of the most pro-ready guys.
Okay. Yeah, they got him listed right under Gabriel Davis, another guy who I like. So Gabriel Davis and Van Jefferson. Yeah, I got to take a look at him. I'll be completely honest, man. This I don't know if this is a bias or what it is. When it comes to Florida and Florida State talent, a lot of times I end up having to tune. I have to tune it out and wait for a while. I have to wait for after the combine, or I have to wait like a good period of time to actually do like a decent look at them. I don't ever pretend to be an evaluator of talent whatsoever, but I do pay attention to certain players. Well, not just certain players. I pay attention to as many players that come across my radar, and I'm glad that you brought him up because he actually is one of the top ranked. Well, not top ranked, but he's in the top upper half of the wide receivers that are available. But I haven't watched because I know Florida is like as much as I watched Florida during the college season, I didn't for some reason I just never paid attention to a lot of their talent outside of the quarterback because they've always had like they just run such a weird offense. Like it's off me to pay attention to them. I guess it's one of the worst offenses I've ever seen, and it came from a guy who, of course, he also ran that offense at Mississippi State University, and I was like, man, this is so infuriating for me to watch offense. So I didn't get to see. So while I watched the scoreboard and everything, I just never paid attention to the individual talent that Florida had. But yeah, but his being what is he now? He's going to come out and he's going to be what? He's going to be
24.
23. So he's going to be
Yeah,
drafted.
he'll be 23.
Yeah.
And then when the season starts, it's 24.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's not terribly bad, man. You got two. Well, you got at least two contracts with them. You got a rookie contract and a possible 2-3 year extension before it becomes an issue. When age becomes an issue after 30. You know what I mean?
That it cut out for a couple seconds there.
Okay, you back?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, man, so he's got some time. Then coming out at 23, he's not super old at all. He's solid. He's solid at 23. If he's playing at 24, you've got like I said, you got a 4-year contract and a possible 2-3 year extension before you have to look at him and be like, okay, if he's slowing down, then you don't make it to another contract. But yeah, 24, he's solid. Oh yeah, I'm gonna take a look at him. Definitely gonna take a look at him. Let's see, going back to on the I'm sorry. I know we talked about a little bit, just touched on a couple of running backs. Who else did you like out of the running back group?
Out of the running back group, I'm a fan of Zach Moss out of Utah.
Yeah, so am I. The guy runs hard.
Yeah. I also like, let's see, AJ Dillon of Boston College.
Man, I could high five you right now. Yeah, I've been talking about AJ Dillon. For the past probably 2 months. I was like, I don't care what happens. If that guy makes it to the fifth or sixth round, the Bucs need to get him. The Bucs need a bruiser. And that dude, God, man, that dude.
I was checking the measurements on Twitter earlier today. AJ Dillon came and measured at 6 foot 247.
Yeah. Yep. That dude, and you've seen him run. That dude is he's like a juggernaut. He is like a juggernaut. He picks up some speed, and people pretty much move out of the way. A lot of cats ain't gonna just jump in front of him.
Nope.
I remember during the playoffs, while we were watching the playoffs, when the Titans were having their run, I messaged about 4 people. I was like, "Hey, AJ Dillon is getting some money made right now. Like he's not even touching the field, and somebody's gonna look at AJ Dillon and his running and think, yeah, that's Henry. Like we want that. Like people think twice about stepping.
They've got similar styles because Derrick Henry, as big as he isn't really like a run straight forward and knock you over kind of back. He's kind of like gain momentum kind of back. Once he gets to the outside and he hits the linebackers and safeties, that's where he makes his money.
It's an issue.
It's not really like a 3 yard in a cloud of dust kind of guy. He's not
on the goal line though. On the goal line in short yardage situations, he picks up momentum pretty quick. He doesn't hit top speed quick, but he picks up momentum quick enough, or in a really short burst. If it was like a 1 yard gain that he needs to get, or on the goal line, he can get that, and he'll show his power there. Like he will show his power there. AJ Dillon takes a little bit longer to get up to speed, but once he gets up to speed, sheesh.
Yeah.
Train tracks, get off, move. That boy's big.
And
go ahead.
At the complete opposite end of the spectrum, there's Anthony McFarland, the running back out of Maryland.
Yeah.
5'9", 5'8", 198.
Really? Because I had at one he weighed in at 198 during the combine. Because I had him at.
I'm just looking at Draft Network profile right now.
Okay, because they had him at 208 is what they had him at.
Really?
Yeah, they had him at 208. Just a couple of weeks ago. But maybe that changed. I had to double check his combine numbers again. Definitely got to check that out. But no, he's a. I've taken a look at him, and he's pretty swift. I like that guy a good deal.
Yeah.
Let's see who else did I like out of. Who else did I like out of the running back group? There's a lot of guys who are in the top half that I liked a good deal, and then again, AJ Dillon has been my guy. I pretty much dialed in on AJ Dillon. AJ
Yeah.
Dillon has been the guy that I just dialed in on. Like, yo, if AJ Dillon makes the 5th or 6th round, that guy is gonna do some. He can do some damage. He can really, really, really do some damage with the Bucks. And
Honestly,
I'm excited about it if it happens.
I'd say the top 5 running backs right now in the draft, not in any particular order, probably DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Zach Moss. And do you think if one of those guys, at least one of those guys, is available in the second round, do we take a shot at him?
If DeAndre Swift is somehow available, which I highly doubt, if DeAndre Swift is available, DeAndre Swift needs to be in a Buccaneers uniform, regardless of what happens in the first round with the Bucks pick. He should be in the top consideration of any player that comes out if he makes it to the second round. Um, Zach Moss, I can see Zach Moss being a late second or third round guy if the Bucks trade back.
Do you know who Clyde Edwards-Helaire? He,
LSU,
I've
yeah.
watched, I've watched some of him. He really, really reminds me of Doug Martin a lot.
Really? Because I was going to say Darren Sproles.
Kind of like a hybrid between those two.
Yeah.
But I was getting a lot of Doug Martin vibes from Edwards-Helaire.
I'm going to have to take some more looks at him. But yeah, that's what I got. When I looked at him, I'm like, man, I get, probably more because of his stature that I thought about Darren Sproles. The dude is like 5'6.5" or 5'7". And he's like a bowling ball, but he's fast as all hell. Another guy that I hadn't mentioned yet when it comes to the running backs was Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
He's a solid dude. He can catch and he can run. He's a hard nosed runner more than like a shifty, crazy shifty dude. He's a hard nosed runner that can get some stuff done. But that's an earlier pick. If I had to pick between an earlier guy, Keyshawn, and some of these other cats, I'm like, you know what? Wait, get AJ Dillon. Give me that AJ Dillon.
I haven't looked a ton at Keyshawn Vaughn yet. I'll take a look at him more.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it's a pretty solid group of running backs, but again, they fall short when it comes to like the depth and the level of talent of both the offensive tackles and the wide receivers, and maybe just on the cusp of being past the defensive line talent. I think the defensive line talent started to taper off really steep after maybe with the second or third round. Again, I kind of hate to speak like that, like I'm a real talent evaluator, but the guys that I like, and from what I've seen as far as their rankings and overall rankings for all the talent in the draft, they seem like a shorter number of the top tier guys, and then again it tapers off a good deal after like the 15th to let's say 18th guy. Everybody else kind of like feels like a 4th round, 5th round player. Still solid guys, but not like just major players.
Mm-hmm.
But no, this is gonna be an super interesting draft again for the Bucks. I have to go back to the one piece that I wrote about the Bucks having this year is the year that they need to get an identity, and it all starts with how they draft. Again, we're at a stage where the Bucks can either lean and go back to what they just tried to go starting with 2015, where they tried to make it all about the quarterback and the offense, which again we kind of built the Bucks basically kind of built the team around the offense. When you look at like their top tier players and how they geared everything with their wide receiver, not wide receiver, they already had Mike Evans, but then you went to quarterback, you went You want to secure your quarterback with an offensive lineman, two of them, with Donovan Smith and Alan Marpet. Alan Marpet obviously excelled and probably exceeded most people's expectations. Donovan Smith has kind of been an average left tackle. He gets a lot of flack, but I think he's an average left tackle. He's no game savior. He's no generational talent, but I think he's been solid. I think he's actually been more than solid when you look at the competition that he has to face all the time. Um,
Yeah.
and according to the one of the few places that I can actually track down, how many sacks players give up, he actually had the one season, which a lot of coaches, I'm assuming, look at. He had the one season in which he didn't give up a sack in 2016, and that's a huge deal. That's a very huge deal, kind of like a wide receiver or a running back getting 1,000 yards. Like, okay, man, he can get to that point at one time. You assume or you hope that he can make it back to that point or something very close to it, and that's a top tier level. Like, that he can perform at that level. So again, you had those two guys, and then going forward, you had O.J. Howard, you had Chris Godwin, and then the cherry on top is when I think the offense they really thought the offense was going to take off, and the team building is when they went and traded up to get a kicker. They thought, I'm assuming that Jason Light was like, man, this is it. This is like, we've got everything else in order. We're completely home free. Now we can play around. Now we can put the cherry on top and get a kicker who, at the very least, guarantee us 3 points on every single drive or every other drive. And damn it, was he wrong?
God,
damn it, was he
that
wrong?
Draft is painful to look at.
It was, man, and it could have it should. I felt like it should have been better, because I had no issue whatsoever with Vernon Hargreaves being a pick. I had no issue whatsoever with Noah Spence being a pick, because I thought Noah Spence was a phenomenal talent from a physical standpoint. I'm assuming mentality or something else got to him, and I'm not sure what it was. I hope the best for him. One day, actually, I hope I get to speak to him and kind of see what that mentality thing is, and just see where the breakdown was. Because physically, the dude had it. I mean, we watched that man play literally with one arm, one shoulder, going up against some of the best offensive tackles in the game, and actually put them to shame for his first and second year. And then all of a sudden, the wheels basically just fell the hell off.
Yeah, he just didn't develop any moves or anything. He just relied on his speed going around the outside, and didn't work.
For a good portion there, I mean, it did work for a good portion. There was no development, like you said. But that's a very short time that the development was deemed at a halt. Again, he was let go in his fourth season. Like, his third season, he didn't even play. His third season, they held him out. Well, or he held himself out, whatever the case may be. It just felt like he didn't get it, and they saw that he didn't get it, and they just did not play him. And he earned it. I guess he earned it, because the year before, again, he was out there doing his thing, and he was impressive. But there must have been some disconnect, and again, it could be a complete mental shift. And I'm very interested in hearing about it. God willing, I get to speak to him and see how that goes. It's like, kind of like we saw the same thing with Jonathan Banks. Jonathan Banks, who was our cornerback, our second-round pick back in 2013, I believe it was, or 2012. 2013, I believe, right?
Yeah, that was the offseason we traded for Darrell Reeves.
Correct.
So we didn't have a first pick.
Right.
So he was our first pick then.
So he came in, and he had a good season with as a rookie. He had a pretty decent season under the tutelage of Darrell Reeves, which was one of the best cornerbacks in the history of the game at that time, and I believe still now. But then we saw what happened when when another coach came in and basically told him he wasn't good enough. Lovie Smith came in and said he wasn't good enough, and he showed so by bringing in cornerbacks to take his spot, and they in fact took his spot, and they were nowhere near as talented as Jonathan Banks, and they didn't produce anywhere near like Jonathan Banks. If you looked at Jonathan Banks's stats and his game footage, you'd say there's no way a team gave up on him or would give up on him at that time, and that's exactly what happened. And I believe that, again, it goes to the Zeno thing. I think that he was broken mentally. And again, I don't want to speak for him. I can't speak to the issue. again, it's one of the reasons why I want to speak to him and or Noah Spence. But when a coach and an organization show that they don't want you initially, I think that heartbreak and that mentality can break some people. And it felt like that's what happened with Jonathan Banks, and then it also felt like that's what happened with Noah Spence, even though they did get shots in other areas and other teams, both Houston and Chicago for Jonathan Banks. But he couldn't. He just never emerged or never got out of that funk that he got in after Lovie Smith and that team that he put together after they told him he wasn't good enough. He was just coming from an area in which he was the best college cornerback in college. He was the best collegiate cornerback, period. And he was always good enough, and then he was told he wasn't. So I think that did something to him, and I believe, again, it did something possibly to Noah Spence. But that 2016 draft for the Bucs, whew, then we only have Ryan Smith left, and he's a free agent right now.
Ryan Smith never really panned out as a defensive back. He's good on special teams, but
I think he was kind of screwed there too, though. When he came in, they brought him in as I believe a safety, and then they moved him to cornerback, and then they moved him to safety again. It's like, wait a minute, what are you doing? They brought him. No, I apologize. They brought him in as a cornerback, and then they moved him to safety, and I think they tried to move him back to cornerback. I'm just like, was that never a plan for this dude? Y'all just trying to, he was a 4th round pick. Were you just, seeing what would happen or could happen? There was no real plan for him. They just kept switching him back and forth. And again, we just did the same thing, or we're doing the same thing right now with MJ Stewart, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I think they got him in the draft and they wanted him to play strong safety, but something happened. Some sort of injury happened at corner, and he just kind of got shoved in there, and he does not look good at corner.
Yeah,
he does not look fast.
No, definitely didn't look fast. He was getting a whooping several times. But then again, I just kind of have to have a little bit of, I want to say, patience, or at least sympathize with him, because again, going back and forth at the toughest position and getting switched around a lot is.
Yeah, and the expectations set for rookies each season, it just seems like it gets higher and higher.
Especially for cornerbacks. With all these rule changes and everything, with these cornerbacks, man, it's definitely a practice in patience and kind of having a level out your expectations with them. And man, it's real tough on him. But again, he has been shown to be a productive player, especially at the special teams side of the special teams role in which he was given. So he's definitely excelled there, and it's made a difference. Like, you can see when he was in the game, the difference in the special teams and when he wasn't. There was a marked improvement, and you don't want to say it's all one player, but it's hard to say that it's not, because that's the only thing that really changed when he was in it. He was in the rotation, and when he wasn't. So, but yeah, he is the lone 2016 draft survivor right now.
Yep.
And again, he has to be re-signed. That's it.
What are the odds it's re-signed, in your opinion?
What's that?
What are the odds Ryan Smith comes back?
Ryan, I would say, if the Bucs are smart, I would say it's a pretty high chance that he gets re-signed. He's getting re-signed as a special teams player and a backup quarterback, and he could be had at a really inexpensive price. And with the Bucs having to deal with the issues that they are dealing with when it comes to re-signing these players that they feel are super necessary, you don't pass up on a player that can be as effective as a Ryan Smith in its limited role. You don't want to give up on somebody that's that inexpensive and has a specialty, and you don't want to give up on that. That would be.
But
that's what
I
would
say. He is somewhat of a priority, but definitely not a high priority.
No, I wouldn't even call him a priority. I would say he should definitely be
Luxury.
kind of, yeah.
If we've got the space.
Yeah. I definitely think he should be re-signed. He definitely should be re-signed. He can be a special teams captain without a question to me. He should definitely be re-signed. Again, it's super inexpensive. Super inexpensive when it comes to relative terms to the contracts and everything that we're trying to do with everyone else. So he should definitely be one of those guys to come back. I tell you what, I'll give you the next 2 to 3 minutes, man. Anything that you want to talk about, anything that you've not been able to point out, as far as what do you see, what the Bucks can do with this upcoming draft, or what you feel like they should do. You got the floor open to yourself, man. You can anything that you want to speak on, any ideas that you want to toss out there, man. I'm open ears, and everybody else will be listening as well.
All right, put me on the spot. I think
you're not on the spot. You just me.
But yeah, I think right now, as our situation right now, excluding quarterback, because I don't like talking about that right now.
Smart man.
But I'd say tackle is a need. We got to get younger on the defensive line. Free safety is a big question mark right now. I don't think a lot of people are talking about that right now, but free safety is definitely a question mark. And I think if we've got the money, I think Devin McCourty would be perfect. Having a veteran guy who knows his way around, just in the back directing traffic and being a leader for all the young guys we've got in the secondary. He would be perfect for us if we've got the money.
So you like Devin McCourty at free safety in case we don't get Justin Evans back?
Yeah.
Okay. But is that predicated on whether or not Justin Evans makes his way back? Which I believe today they kind of gave an update that I think it would be July that he would possibly be back.
I honestly have no idea what's happening with Justin Evans right now.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was an update someone gave. I say someone. I think it was Bruce Arians who gave that update. I have to check and look. I think that was reported by Mr. Greg Allman. I double checked to see if that was the case, if he was going to be available. Because he was supposed to be available earlier, I think April, but then it got pushed back. So I double check. It may not be as far as May though, or sorry, as far as back as July. So I checked that out. So
I hope he.
What's that?
I hope he comes back. I really don't want what happened to Kendall Beckwith to happen to him. Just have one injury and then just be out forever, indefinitely.
Yeah, that was a big hit, man. That's a tough story. It's something else I want to follow up on if I ever get a chance to speak with Kendall Beckwith. Kendall Beckwith was one of those guys who, when people saw him, or saw the selection, fourth round guy, like, oh man, not another linebacker, blah blah blah. But then as soon as Quan Alexander was out of there and he stepped in and stepped up, it's like, holy crap, we can't do it without him. He was one of those surprising players, man, and I really hate that his career got shortened. I don't know if it's completely over with, and maybe completely over with the Bucks, but I hate to see him get hurt. I hate to see any player get hurt, but that dude was a good player, and he was just getting started. So,
very good.
So yeah, I'm right there with you. Also, again, Justin Evans, man. Justin Evans was another one of those guys who a lot of people saw at safety and was like, I don't know. He misses a lot of tackles. He doesn't do this, and that. These guys coming out of this combine and coming into this draft, all these collegiate players they're not doomed to be exactly what they were in college. And Justin Evans, he made good on his ability in the short time that he played with the Bucks. He came in and he corrected some of the issues that he had. He had some bad issues as well as a collegiate player out of Texas A&M, and he came in and he cleaned himself up a good bit. He still has some faults, absolutely, but he came in and he played well in the short time that he played, and I thought he played exceedingly. I thought he excelled, and he exceeded expectations for me. And I was one of the guys who thought highly of him. He did really well, and to see him get injured the way he did, which it seemed like it was nothing when he got injured, but then it's now become a thing. Like, holy crap, we may not see him in a Bucks uniform again. That is a kind of a hard deal. It's a hard deal for the Bucks, but that dude is a good player, and I want to see him back. But yeah, Devin McCourtney would be a solid guy to come in. But I still like the young players that we got for the Bucks, man, at safety. I like all of them.
Yeah, I'm not saying to replace any of them, but we've got a lot of young guys in the secondary, and it just feels like just having a vet back there to just lead them, not necessarily be like someone we rely on, but someone who helps the other guys in the secondary and in the study room, watching film, in the locker room.
Yeah.
He'd be a good guy to have around.
Yeah. Now, yeah, I mean, I do agree with that to a good degree. But I also said too something that I was telling guys a while ago. I was like, next year, the veteran player that everybody wants to see on the Bucks, that veteran player is going to be somebody who's actually been with the Bucks, who came in as a rookie. That veteran player is going to be Carlton Banks. As young as he is, Carlton Banks has been one of those guys who say Carlton Banks, Carlton Davis. I've been for 3 years I've been calling the man Carlton Banks. What the hell is wrong with me? I've been watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air for too damn long. But Carlton Davis is going to be that. He's going to be that veteran guy. He's going to be that guy who look at everybody and say, "Hey, niggas, he struggled. Remember when he got his first game against New Orleans, and he got his ass toasted.
That was ugly.
It was ugly. It was ugly, but he didn't stop playing. I thought about that today. From 3 o'clock to like 3:30. That whole game was just running through my mind. I'm like, yo, that dude was getting an education. Like, they were picking on him. They were absolutely picking on him, and he just kept playing. Of course, you have no other choice but to keep playing, right? And he just learned, and he didn't just become a formidable opponent against Michael Thomas. He became a guy. Like, he became a dude like, holy crap, like, this is gonna be a good matchup. And he's that, like, he can teach somebody about struggling. He can teach somebody about, not seeing success and wanting success and not giving up. Like, he can do that. He hasn't been propped up to a level or been like some guy who's a superstar and an accomplished player. Like, he can still tell somebody, the young guys, about the grind, because he's still doing it and he's still trying to achieve that level. So again,
that same exact situation happened this past season with Jamel Dean against the Seahawks.
Absolutely.
And then you saw the quick turnaround with Jamel Dean.
Yeah.
Just by the end of the season, he was probably right up there with Carlton Davis, playing at high level, playing real good. I'm excited to see what he does next season.
Yeah, and you can look in not just the secondary, but you can look at it's funny. You can look at Devin White. Devin White was coming off of injury, and he had that game. What was his week? The second game against Carolina, when Christian McCaffrey basically shook 4 people right in the 10-yard, right at the goal line, 10 yards in, and there was a shot of Devin White on the sideline on the bench looking at the big screen when they were showing the playback, man. And I'll never forget. I was on Twitter and I texted someone, not texted someone, but I tweeted in a DM. I was like, yo, look at this dude. Like, he is pissed. This cat is pissed off for greatness. Like that, he was embarrassed. You can see it. He just looked completely embarrassed. And he was like, nah, that ain't happening again. And he became a monster from that point on through the rest of the season. He had his faults. He had pretty much every single fault that he had every single fault that Quan Alexander had coming out of college and even into his career now, which we saw a little bit in the Super Bowl, with the missing of the tackles and so forth. Devin White had the exact same issues. Like, he used to always tackle high, or he'd always go for like the high tackle, and he would miss. And that's kind of what he did in that game against Carolina, and that's how he got embarrassed. And he tightened up after that. But that's the beauty of having young players who have like a maturity to them. Like, these guys, they got embarrassed, they got their licks, but they kept playing, and they kept playing harder, and they kept playing smarter. Going back to Carlton Davis, of course, he always ended up getting these pass interference calls, which I believe were kind of ticky-tacky. I think they were really, really on the edge of just being, okay, now they're just picking on him because they saw him, get flags in previous games, because a lot of them just didn't even exist. I'm like, that's not a pass interference. But these young guys have been the ones to step up and kind of push things forward. And kind of bouncing back and forth here. But Devin White, at the end of the season, was like, yo, like, ain't no more of that rookie stuff. Like, I'm in the league now. Like, there's no more Mr. Nice Guy, no more little rookie. Like, I'm taking over from now on. That's when I look at guys like Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, and be like, okay, I don't know if I would completely go crazy about having to have a veteran presence, because these young guys are learning the lesson themselves, and they've already learned such lessons themselves, so they can just push forward, and they can teach the young guys, like, hey, you're going to get on my level. Like, we're going to get that together, instead of having somebody who come in who's already had, like, an accomplished career and like, hey, you guys want to get to where I am. Like, these cats would be the ones pushing their peers to be as good as they are and get to, like, a level of beyond good altogether. That's kind of why I kind of take a step back when I'm looking at having to, go out and get veteran presences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
But not, I mean, Devin McCourty obviously a good player, so I don't think anybody would be upset if he came along on the BUCS. I mean, absolutely, good player. You got to have him regardless. But yeah, just when I would love to see the young guys continue their growth and be good enough to mentor other young players. Cool.
I really want to see Jordan Whitehead take that next step and become.
Same.
Because I love watching him play. He's all over the place.
Yeah, full speed, right or wrong. Right or wrong, I'm getting that fast. I mean, I might not be in the right spot, but I'm gonna get that fast. I love him. Again, the young guys who made mistakes early, and they just keep going.
Thrown right into the fire.
Yeah, for better or worse, man. For better or worse. And that's why I think, and again, I don't think I could want anything more than the young guys being thrown into the fire the way they are, and then they proved that they're not a complete liability. Of course, it was up and down a lot of the season, but these guys just kept getting better, and they just kept getting better. The competition kept getting high, and they kept playing right along with the competition. There were some bad games, obviously, but I can't remember a whole lot of games in which the secondary was like the cause of the loss. A lot of yards, absolutely, but they didn't give up the touchdowns in the red zone and so forth. Like, they stood up at that time, and they made their plays. They gave up a lot of yards, but they didn't break and give up a bunch of points in a lot of cases for a lot of the touchdowns.
Yeah, I saw this interesting stat on Twitter. I think it was yesterday, that this past season, Carlton Davis, he was tied for, I think, first in the league with touchdowns given up, but he also was up there at the top in passes defended. So that is something real interesting to look at.
Yeah, it was kind of. God, I almost hate to even revisit, not to revisit, but to kind of bring it up. But a lot of that too, man, is the fact that the BUCS had more. The BUCS defense was in. They were in their side of the field more often than any other team in the league because of all the turnovers. Like, there was so many drives that were like 40 yards or less, 30 yards or less because of turnovers. So when you look at that threshold and how offenses scored against the Bucks defense, that's kind of where your explanation comes in at, because they played so much in that short field. You know, teams didn't have to travel 75 yards down the field to score a touchdown on the Bucks. And with the way, again, with the passing rules and these guys being as young as they were, I'm not trying to give them any excuses. Just trying to give some context and actually state some of the stuff that's for real. Like that's a tough position to play, and he's going against the number one wide receivers for a lot of the opposition, and they're being put again 30 yards away from a touchdown. It's like, sheesh. It only makes sense. I want to pull. I wish I could pull that up. I should try to pull that up and see who was number 2, and then check out the defensive ranking or the what the starting position was for most of his team's opposition, because that makes a difference. I mean, it really does make a difference. But Carlton Davis, man, I really think that guy.
He's got the right attitude
absolutely.
and the right skills. So.
I absolutely. Again, he reminds me so much. He reminds me a lot of Jonathan Banks. I just hope that no coach comes in and tell him, "Hey, you're gonna be the fourth cornerback. We'll bring in a guy I had 5 years ago." But no, he's a good player, man. I like a lot of those guys in the secondary. They prove that they can grow. They prove that they can make mistakes and still keep going, and actually get better in game. And they got better in game, and then all through the season. Those guys really stepped up. I don't think anybody should try to take that away from them. I don't think anybody could take that away from them. But on that note, man, I tell you what, I want to thank you once again. I appreciate your time and talking Bucks, man, and I want to thank you again.
I do this all day.
Man, I greatly appreciate it. I definitely love to have you back, and hopefully get you back when I start doing some of the live shows with some of the other guests as I get them in, so you can kind of speak with them and kind of get your own questions and everything out to them. Are you on any other social media platforms outside of the Buccaneers subreddit on the Reddit platform? Is there any way that you can have that you want to engage with any other fellow Bucs fans, be it Facebook or Twitter or MySpace, if you have it, Foursquare, whatever you have?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. Same username as on the Bucs Reddit, so it shouldn't be too hard to find me.
Okay.
I'm not on any other ones, though.
Probably safer that way.
Yeah, just Twitter.
All right.
I appreciate you. This is the first time anyone's asked me to be on a podcast, much less a football podcast, and I couldn't be happier. I love talking Bucks.
Indeed.
I could do it until cows come home.